everyone. Happy Tuesday. I'm the Grace Strega, and I'm here to give you your daily collective read for today, Tuesday, August 13th, 2024. What do we have coming through in the cards for today? May I please have the first 5 cards in our 5-card spread? First card we are starting our day off with today is the Hanged Man. I'm not surprised to see this card today. We are in the midst of the Mercury retrograde. I'm going to say it again. The Mercury retrograde is not here to confound your flow. It is here to help you recognize and identify what is the difference between a rut and a groove. What is the difference between a rut and a flow state? So if these are modalities where you're feeling any of that slowdown, you're feeling a little bit of that, we get that little bit of that grinding gears, if you will, that often occurs during these retrograde periods. That a moment of navigating moments of stillness, how to experience and how to perceive that. We did recognize last week, this is a little bit more difficult for masculine energy right now. Bearing in mind, this is not based on gender, but what it feels most aligned to, specifically and particularly because what we're recognizing right now is for a lot of that energy, feeling some of that restlessness, feeling some of that slowdown, it can feel a little energetically difficult. Again, being able to navigate that, utilizing that pathwork productively has been a little bit easier for the feminine right now because we observed that the feminine is becoming much more practical with some of that feeling of stillness. This is happening across all of the frequencies right now. For masculine and feminine energy, in that modality of experience as well, if these are circumstances or situations where you're recognizing the changes within the self, what did we observe that is occurring right now? For a lot of that energy, potentially looking back, seeing how far you've come, and then being able to observe the past with different optics. A lot of that energy may be feeling like that's that moment of coming into reconciliation within the self, because that ability of identifying, seeing something in a way that you haven't seen it before, this is what is allowing for that sense or that space of energetic breakthrough, particularly and especially in relationality to experiences where, and again, feminine, you may have felt like you were not utilizing enough of that energetic resilience. You were in that moment of emotionally overgiving to circumstances or situations. A bit of this energetic recall that we're seeing right now, that is a lot of the feminine energy coming into that point of feeling some of that balance. Because a lot of that feminine energy, if these are modalities wherein again, you're experiencing the changes from the past, and in the observation of recognizing that you would do something different than the past, you recognize that you've changed, immediately that comes into a point of peace. That comes into a moment of stabilization, that comes into a moment of, like, again, feeling a lot of that weight or a lot of that pressure in terms of the balance point between feeling the sense of recognizing what you would do differently and letting that kind of conduct that pathwork forward. There's almost a bit of contemplation and stillness, a lot of contemplation that we see is occurring during this retrograde cycle. Same right now for masculine. If these are modalities or experiences where you didn't necessarily have so much of that emotional security or emotional safety that was allowing you to guide your experiences, potentially feeling those experiences where you closed off your emotional center, we see even now that that's a lot of the masculine also experiencing a point of breakthrough. But I need to point out, sometimes breakthrough points, they feel painful, right? They can feel energetically painful because that pathwork of wisdom, that pathwork of understanding, it's also often built upon the observation in terms of what one would do differently. So we see even now that for a lot of that energy deep within the divine union, recognizing and identifying, giving that compassion back to self, letting that modality or experience inform your movement forward. For a lot of the energy in that experience right now, that's a point of like deep contemplation. Being able to utilize that in a productive way is what a lot of the energy deep within the divine union is doing right now. While for masculine and feminine energy that is coming into divine union, this is coming through as that healthy resolution energy we're seeing, particularly because we saw that so much of that energy right now is trying to come into a point of reconciliation. Why are we seeing reconciliation that's potentially coming through right now through that channel? Because we're identifying and recognizing that for a lot of that energy, having that moment of energetic conflict, feeling that sense of energetic disruption, that was either a moment that immediately built into a point of catharsis. If you experience a conflict that would have been more explosive or more eruptive disruptive in the past, but being able to navigate it in a very balanced way. A lot of that energy is feeling the easement and satisfaction in terms of how far they've come. And there's a little bit of that like self-appreciation there as well, because this is the energy coming into divine union that's recognizing that it's not just the fact that you've come into alignment with an energetic counterpart that allows that sense of conflict resolution to be the primary focus as it relates to how to navigate circumstances, but you're understanding that you are also a part of that, that the work that you've done on yourself has also helped to kind of navigate forward in such a way that you're able to build into an energetic union with counterpart that feels like, even in moments of difficulty, it feels more like tension instead of separation. Now, we do see that there is some energy right now that is still navigating some of those hurdles, especially and particularly if these are experiences or circumstances or situations where there was too much of that energetic explosiveness. If masculine was too much in that modality of subjecting another to emotions instead of articulating through them, or if feminine as a reactivity point to seeing the masculine come into that state of over-emotionality, building that point of becoming overly defensive and protective. This is a lot of the energy that's contemplating, again, the changes within the self. But what's important about the work that we're seeing here is this isn't the energy that's coming into divine union that's saying that it's all upon one person to be able to facilitate those changes. This is the energy that's really kind of working in collaboration to try to recognize and identify the difference between what one needs to change within versus what one is experiencing without. And sometimes that can be hard work. There may be a lot of unpacking that's potentially happening here, because we did see that for some of that energy coming into divine union, having to feel that sense of articulating to a counterpart, almost coming into a point by way of apology, saying like something that you took or something that was valuable at a time of experiencing or feeling a lot of energetic trauma. Something that used to be necessary that you may have brought into a state or space where it no longer is. This is how we see that so much of this energy right now, even in a moment of difficulty, is feeling like they're building that energetic bridge, because in the sense or space of being able to recognize and identify where those tendencies emerged, this is the energy that's growing to know one another in the process. So there could be a lot of this feeling right now of, again, breakthrough that's occurring through a difficult circumstance, because again, when we experience energetic conflict, there's always an opportunity to make that a beautiful lesson as opposed to a point of energetic separation. And we see even now that there's a lot of that energy that is letting those experiences, not just saying, not coming into that space of saying, let's just pretend that didn't happen. Because what occurs in those modalities where we say, let's pretend it doesn't happen, that's the energy that recognizes that when you say it doesn't happen, it's like you're setting the energetic standard and saying that that is something that's energetically permissible. We see that a lot of this energy is recognizing and feeling that stabilization point in the affirmation of seeing a counterpart that's ready to stay and do that hard work. While for masculine and feminine energy right now, that is in separation, a lot of this work that we're seeing that is occurring right now in separation has to do with those modalities or those experiences wherein, again, like feeling that sense of energetic balance in relationality to what you're taking from the experiences from the past and recognizing their implementation point in how they're changing, how you're navigating situations going forward. I keep telling you guys, closure does not come from going back to the past. Closure comes from moving forward. So for a lot of the energy right now in separation, having those experiences, having those modalities wherein you recognize you feel like you are being informed from the past experiences, or rather, something about the present is building the context and understanding something from the past in a deeper way. A lot of this energy right now in separation, maybe not a lot of activation that's happening here, because I see that so much of this energy in separation is going through that modality of contemplation, recognizing and understanding, building that intentionality right now as it relates to what it is that one desires going forward. I'm also not surprised to see this right now, because we saw that there's a lot of this energy in separation right now that is navigating tangible hurdles, tangible obstacles. And in that experience or in that perception of navigating a tangible obstacle, if these are modalities wherein something feels like it's too emotionally overwhelming, the ability to recognize and to identify, to come into that space or place wherein you're seeing one's own self, you're assessing what feels like it is something that could be navigated through. A lot of that energy is recognizing or going inward in terms of like what one needs. This could even be a lot of energy that's assessing in separation right now what those manifestations manifestation goals are, letting those manifestation goals orient to a certain extent in relationality to what that pathwork will be, because there's a lot of contemplation that I'm seeing right now that's occurring with the energy in separation. Second card in our five card spread for today is, oh, we love to see this card today. We've got here our 10 of Pentacles in its upright. A lot of that feeling, or a lot of that movement right now into what feels like it is energetically practical. We saw this is happening for the feminine right now in a big way. This has been happening over the span of several days. Feminine energy, I'm just going to say, has been able to navigate this retrograde with a little bit more easement, because some of that emotionality is building into that state of stabilization. So a lot of the feminine energy we're seeing right now is channeling any of that emotionality into productive spaces and places. For masculine and feminine, for masculine, this has been a little bit more energetically triggering. We've been recognizing that it has been creating a little bit more restlessness in the masculine energy. But even here, we like to see this because this feels like breakthrough points of being able to come into a point of productivity, particularly around situations or circumstances that may have felt like they were like creating some of that energetic frustration. For energy right now in separation, I see it even now. This is that return to practicality to a certain extent, because if this is the energy that's recognizing and identifying what they feel within, but looking towards what they feel is best energetically, not only for themselves, but also for the connection of potentially building forth with a counterpart. This is a lot of the energy that's bringing that sense of practicality to circumstances or situations. And for even here, this is either allowing for a breakthrough point. It's allowing for that modality of, again, recognizing the limitations that may be preventing a partnership from being able to come forward. But what happens in that modality where there's a moment where you're not taking something energetically personally? This is the energy that's almost, again, recognizing and identifying, feeling like they're on the same page in relationality to why there is a separation occurring. That immediately allows the energy to move into a space of positivity, because that is the energy that's not feeling that sense of frustration with the self, not beating oneself up because something isn't coming into fruition, recognizing the tangible hurdles that immediately allows for that sense or that space of feeling that heart opening that we discussed, that ability of feeling that sense of being able to hold space for some of that emotionality as you continue forward from this point. Or these are energies right now that are still trying to figure out what that energetic solution is, trying to work through that workable solution, building that practical plan, having that practical plan. I still see a lot of this energy that's having I'm saying right now, this is one of those retrogrades where there's problem solution. A lot of this is navigating into what could feel like very productive breakthroughs. Now for masculine and feminine energy right now that is coming into divine union, a lot of this work right now, again, if this is coming through in relationality to conflict resolution, being able to see circumstances or situations wherein you're able to navigate forward in practical ways. This is the energy that's feeling a lot of that release and relief, if you will, because if these are experiences wherein in the past, something about that would have been more energetically difficult. If these are experiences in the past wherein you were in some kind of partnership and someone just said let it go, I don't want to address it, we're just going to energetically ignore it. But instead, even if these were spaces or places where there was a difficult emotional circumstance and you're addressing it, you're perceiving it, even in the modality of being able to recognize and acknowledge something in order to facilitate a change on it, this is the energy that feels the easement point in identifying that there's something here that even if there's a hurdle that's being navigated, it feels like it is healthy. It feels like it is productive. It feels like it is being observed, and via the ability to observe and to articulate upon it allows for the possibility of, again, new possibilities were it to occur again. Because a lot of this energy is almost coming into that modality of saying it's okay to have to learn an energetic lesson so long as we don't have to continually repeat that energetic lesson in the modality of not observing it or not paying attention to it. While for masculine and feminine energy right now that's deep within the divine union frequency, a lot of this work that we're seeing that's occurring right now for the energy deep within the divine union frequency has to do with that modality of returning to the practical. And I like this because, again, even though we're seeing here A lot of this stickiness that we often see that is characteristic of the retrograde periods. What we're identifying here that is really demarcating this as important is this is the energy that's not allowing themselves to be overwhelmed with any of that energetic slowdown that is so characteristic, or some of that confusion that can sometimes be characteristic of these periods. This is the energy that's immediately channeling that frustration into productive ways, allowing that modality to become an expansion point. Because what happens in those experiences where we feel a point of energetic resistance, if we allow ourselves to stay in that modality, it can feel very limiting, but also it can become expansive. That's that modality or that experience where the limitation becomes a point to expand, because again, that is the gift of the retrograde, the energetic hurdle that becomes a diving board, right? Continuing to get clarification on these cards right now. Third card in our 5-card spread for today is, we have here our strength card in its reversal. It's difficult though, because one of the things that we're seeing that's happening right now with this retrograde journey is it's affecting it's affecting the ego. We're in Leo season and we're having a retrograde. So it's affecting the energetic ego. So it's really important to navigate right now, if you're having those modalities where you feel like your ego is being like pinged, is recognizing the difference between what feels like it hurts the perception of the self versus what feels like it actually impacts one's true intentionality. So I'm going to say it right now. Now is not a time to be reactive or triggered. If there's anything you feel becomes something that effectively feels like it injures the egoic self. Because in that modality of being able to experience an egoic wound, but then having compassion and recognizing and not taking something personally, that is that moment that again allows for that expansion point as it relates to being able to build forward, to build forth, to build into that area of, again, building into that sense of compassion. Because often, I keep getting this, right? A lot of this work that's occurring right now in this particular retrograde has to do with that modality of the ego feeling the blockage of the compassion center, having to work through that to a certain extent, being able to come into that experience of recognizing and identifying. Now, for feminine and masculine energy deep within the divine union frequency right now, if these are modalities and experiences where you're recognizing the changes of the self, this could be a lot of mutual work that's occurring within the divine union frequency, masculine and feminine. Bearing in mind, this is not based on gender, but what it feels most aligned to, wherein you may have recognized that those modalities of allowing oneself to become too worried about those ego wounds would have moved you in a direction oppositional to the one that you desired or aspired to move towards. So what happens in those modalities? I'm not surprised to see this, because masculine, coming into that lesson we've been learning right now about not becoming overly reactive, that if someone brings something towards you that feels like it's energetically childish, you don't oblige them by returning it back in the same way. A lot of that masculine is working through, helping to heal some of those egoic wounds. Feminine energy, if these are modalities wherein, again, overly compassionate or overly emotional in modalities wherein one's own ego felt like it was injured in some way. We see even now that that's the feminine learning that pathwork of energetic resilience, becoming again that ballast point, not taking something personally, but having that moment of energetic compassion towards what others are trying to do versus trying to build into that sense of energetic support for all of those around you. So we see even now that a lot of that energy working in that divine union, like that's hard stuff, right? Because that's like, it's requiring a lot of that ability of moving forward from a point of vulnerability and understanding. But vulnerability and understanding is where compassion lives. That's its address. Like, for masculine and feminine energy that is coming into divine union, a lot of this energy is unpacking situations and circumstances wherein you may have felt like you moved yourself off of your own center in the past. Because if these are experiences wherein, again, you're building into an energetic connection and you're experiencing what might be identified or articulated as some of that first conflict energy, a lot of this energy experiencing something, again, last week, where masculine may have been getting very overly emotional about something, feminine being much more practical, having that ability of addressing it. Even here, we're seeing it's, and again, coming into divine union does not require perfection. It doesn't require spaces or places where conflict isn't like accessible. Conflict can be extremely productive. And we're seeing even now that a lot of that energy is learning the pathwork of how productive, how expansive a conflict point can be as it relates by being open and vulnerable to being able to observe the counterpart's perspectives. This is really valuable stuff, especially because, again, some of the message that we were receiving last week is if masculine was coming into that modality of trying to say to feminine, the masculine almost saying, I only hold on to the things I energetically care about. Feminine coming into that modality of being very energetically practical, saying, I just hold on to everything because of that desire to hold on to things. We see even now that a lot of that energy, being able to view or perceive those pathways, building into that sense of experience, having that understanding. This could be a very opening time right now, because this is the energy that's kind of growing closer in articulating and understanding the differentiation as it relates to perspective in terms of the counterpart. And so we see even now, this could be a lot of that energy that went through a conflict and is now experiencing that modality of feeling the tie that binds. While for masculine and feminine energy right now in separation, there could be a little bit of this energy that fell a little bit out of separation in terms of modalities wherein you may have felt that sense or that space of bringing something, and this is what I'm also seeing, having reacted in a way that is not characteristic to the environment that you're building within the framework of a new energetic connection. Because if these are modalities wherein, again, something like what does the ego want to do? The ego wants to protect us, right? The ego is not there to like confound us. The ego is there for a good reason, right? The ego is like the little guard system to like the soul, right? Like it acts as like a little sentry to a certain extent. So we see even now there may be a lot of articulation that's happening. If these were modalities wherein something about how something was navigated felt like someone's own ego moved them further from their own path. This could be a lot of that energy that is unpacking the situations and circumstances in the past that required that over resiliency of the egoic center, that required that over defensiveness of the egoic center. Because these are the energies that, again, are navigating from a state of compassion and saying, this isn't what I intend. This is something that was learned. This was something that was needed at some point. Remember what we talked about? That sensor space of letting go what feels like it is not necessary anymore. We see that a lot of that work coming into that modality, coming into that experience, like that is a lot of that energetic unpacking that is occurring right now. But again, better out than in, through the articulation and the communication of those circumstances or experiences allows for that modality of easement. It allows for that modality of, again, building the energetic bridge to a certain extent. Now, for masculine and feminine energy that is in separation, this has to do, I see a lot of this energy in separation that is just being profoundly practical right now. There's a lot of energy in separation that is navigating forth between how one energetically feels versus what feels like it's practical and productive. And so we could see even now that this is either energy in separation that is looking towards the situations mutually, having that moment of prioritizing and saying that one's own emotionality is such that you're willing to make those energetic changes to make something more practical. Recognizing that mutual work that is necessary in order to facilitate what could be that energetic plan moving forward. Or if these are energies right now that have articulated or felt like something here is too energetically difficult, causing too much of that energetic friction, that modality of not trying to hold on to someone in the wake of something that feels like it's not in alignment, but almost coming into that space of immediate compassion, almost recognizing and coming into a healthy separation and saying in that modality, it isn't the connection that is causing that separation point, but recognizing the circumstances around a situation that feels like you're doing what's best. We see even now that is an expansive point for a lot of the energy experiencing that, because it's informing upon past situations wherein someone may have been taking something too energetically personally, wasn't navigating something from a space of recognizing the circumstances, but almost, again, allowing the egoic self to hold on to something that didn't feel like it was in alignment. Fourth card in our 5-card spread for today we've got here our Page of Swords in its upright. So what's really beautiful that we're seeing that is occurring right now for a lot of this energy that is in separation is simply the recognition point between like a lot of this energy that's in separation right now is building into a state of energetic confidence in the self in relationality to either, again, finding some pathway of progress via and like an energetically difficult situation, coming through into that solution space. Or this is energy that in a modality of experiencing that immediately is cognizant or conscious of what feels best, not only for the self, but also for the potential counterpart. And in that modality of experience, having that sense, feeling that energetic compassion, the energy, I want to say there's a lot of energy right now that is feeling the experience of someone that is bringing forth a lot of sound judgment to circumstances or situations. But that judgment is almost being articulated on what feels like it is best for both, as opposed to what feels like it is best for one. We see even now that a lot of that energy is potentially healing from experiences or circumstances wherein you may have felt like you had an energetic counterpart that was thinking only about the self, that was only thinking about their own energetic journey. So we see even now that a lot of that energy is either moving forward right now, experienced and feeling the confidence of a healthy energetic separation that has become an expansive point in relationality to the possibilities of what they can aspire and desire to receive in an energetic connection. Or this is energy that is having practical breakthroughs, having that ability of putting their heads together and finding a solution to the energetic problem that's going to allow an easement in order to navigate and build into an energetic connection going forward. While for masculine and feminine energy right now, that is coming into divine union, a lot of this work that we're seeing that is occurring right now for the energy coming into divine union has to do with the recognition point of being able to, again, articulate upon a vulnerability instead of becoming energetically reluctant or resistant towards it. So particularly for masculine, if these are experiences in the past wherein you had those experiences where, again, you felt that emotionality and you just let yourself energetically shut down, if you will, you just closed off that emotional center. We're seeing even now that for a lot of that energy coming into divine union right now, that ability of finding the confidence to be able to articulate upon a vulnerability, to express it, that is what is allowing for a lot of this deepening of an energetic connection to a certain extent. Because we're just seeing here that for a lot of that energy, it is coming into that modality of what feels like it is productive. It's building into that space of being able to feel the confidence of being vulnerable. This is a lot of the energy that's feeling that sense of building into a moment where if you experience something that felt like a conflict, it's now feeling like an energetic breakthrough. While for feminine energy, again, seeing the expression of masculine that either is able to take accountability if there was something that occurred wherein, again, they recognize that their over-emotionality created a wall instead of a bridge, or feminine taking accountability here and becoming energetically defensive and protective in feeling the masculine becoming emotionally expressive. We see even now that these energies, the acknowledgement and the ability to talk through what occurred, this is either allowing for that same expansion point, or this is the energy that's feeling the relief and easement on how easily they were able to navigate a hurdle that sometimes can be a little triggering because it can remind you of those spaces or places in the past wherein that could not occur. While for masculine and feminine energy right now, that is deep within the divine union frequency, this is a lot of this strength and perseverance is what we're seeing. Compassion takes a lot of work. Compassion is hard work. So we see even now, there's a lot of that energy that's navigating circumstances or situations and not allowing, again, the ability to not have one's own ego move you away from the path work, but almost observing that sense of being able to address, not reacting to an egoic wound, but observing it, holding compassion for the self, but also allowing that moment or modality of continuing forward and being energetically productive. We see even now that that's a lot of that energy that's working through that sense of breakthrough. And that breakthrough is that point of confidence, because this is the energy that isn't that's staying very intentional in relationality to what it is their own motivations or what their own intentions are. And that's a lot of the energy at the same time, having to navigate their own vulnerability, their own lack of confidence, specifically and particularly in relationality to experiences where in the past they may have taken something emotionally personally, they may have taken something energetically personally. This is that moment that almost feels like that sense or that space of becoming energetically compassionate and empowering. This could be a lot of work in terms of building towards a state of grace. Fifth card in our 5-card spread for today is, we've got here our Page of Pentacles. Though there's a lot of productivity that we're seeing is occurring right now for the energy deep within the divine union frequency, because this is the energy, and I like to see this. This is a lot of the energy that almost says, and it's like, it's not, and I like this. This is, I want to put it this way. This is not the energy that says when we go high, low, when they go low, we go high. This is the energy that says, I assume we're all going high. I'm giving the compassion and expression and experiencing and identifying that perhaps all of us are trying to go high at every moment. We're all doing the best we can energetically. So we see even now that for that sense or that space of not taking something personally, not feeling it as a modality of oppositional, something that's not oppositional, having compassion in the relationality of everyone doing energetically the best that they can at every moment. We see even now that for a lot of that energy, that ability of doing so, it's allowing for that sense of, again, it's like the compassion, but the compassion that feels like it's in the framework of setting those energetic boundaries, laying those energetic standards, right? Because a lot of this energy that we spoke about, right? We talked about a lot of that work that occurs in spaces or places where someone feels more energetic confusion. When we're in that modality of feeling confusion, what does confusion articulate? Confusion articulates a lack of direction. So it's too easy when we're in those spaces or places of confusion to take something energetically personally, because we're looking for that guidance point outside of the self. So we see even now that for a lot of the energy that is within the divine union frequency, navigating those spaces and places with a sense of compassion, but also, again, being able to recognize how much one is able to energetically give versus what one can come back towards you. We're seeing even now that a lot of that energy is utilizing that pathwork of discernment in giving others confidence, in helping them recognize within their own self, their own ability to find that pathwork. This is almost the energy that, again, through the space of compassion, says to the energy outside of the divine union, you can do that for yourself. That is not something that is required that you have to give others. You can do it for yourself as well. So we see even now that a lot of that energy is feeling the release and relief in terms of not taking something energetically personally and then immediately having a breakthrough, because by not taking something energetically personally, you don't take it personally in relationality. You are able to acknowledge and see how hard all of those around you are working as well. While for masculine and feminine energy coming into divine union right now, this is productive conversations around conflict. This is a lot of energy that feels like they went through a conflict point, and instead of it moving them out of alignment, it feels like it's creating the tie that binds. This is either the energy we're seeing that if there was something that feels like it moved you out of alignment, being able to articulate upon it, to speak through it. That's what we're seeing here. It's the energy that's recognizing those spaces and places wherein they may not felt like they had that ability in the past, especially and particularly if these are energies that are healing from modalities wherein something occurred that felt like it was beyond their own boundaries. And in the ability of articulating through it, someone said, just let it go. I don't want to talk about it. This is the energy that recognizes that when we come into that modality, that's someone basically saying this is what the new energetic standard is. So the ability of the energy to recognize the ability to talk through something in a way, this is the energy that's reaffirming their commitment to maintaining the energetic standards that feel safe and accommodating for both of the energies coming into divine union. While for a lot of this energy right now, if these were easement points, seeing how easy a conflict can be, that's that moment that feels like the assertion and recognizing how far both you have come, but also feeling that sense of appreciation for the counterpart. While for masculine and feminine energy right now in separation, this is practicality, 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 practicality. And again, that ability of not holding on to something, not allowing one's own ego to intervene, but letting that sense of practicality guide a lot of that direction right now. We either see that there is energy that is coming into separation, but from a place of energetic peace, from a place of like sustainability, from a place of recognizing and identifying the energy that comes into separation, desiring and aspiring that the energy coming towards them has the best. You know what I mean? Like not looking at something simply from the desire of wanting to like maintain an energetic connection with someone, but being able to look at the tangibles, to think about what feels best for both energies energetically. There's a lot of this healing, a lot of that peace that is coming through a lot of this, that's almost allowing for that immediate ability to move forward, because this isn't the energy that's feeling that sense of like lowness at the time of a separation occurring. This is the energy that like he feels that sense of like the mutual alignment of someone saying, if circumstances were different, perhaps things would be different, but not holding on too tightly in the process. So feeling that sense of compassion that another is providing you, even in the context of a separation, that becomes an expansion point, because those are the energetic standards that you're maintaining and holding forward as you proceed. While for some of the energy right now, this could be the solution to problems. I'm just recognizing and identifying that for some of the energy in this modality right now, having that ability of seeing something and feeling the breakthrough point and allowing that to be the place of like laying those plans, a lot of this energy could again be starting to move into divine union, because they're seeing and they're being able to come towards one another with new possibilities or new ideas. Continuing to get clarification between our hangman in its reversal in combination with our 10 of Pentacles in its upright. One card to clarify, please. Clarification coming through right now with, we've got here our 9 of Cups in its reversal. So what we appreciate here is there's just a lot. I mean, I want to say there's a moment here of emotional overwhelm that I'm seeing that is occurring for some of the energy in separation. But what happens, listen, what happens in that modality where you have a lot of feelings and you recognize that those feelings are mutually shared? There's that balance point in terms of how you feel versus how another feels. It creates that sense of energetic expansion and compassion. So for a lot of the energy, seeing the modality of working in separation with an energy that is compassionate towards the situation surrounding one or another, we're seeing even now that a lot of that energy, like that is how the energy is healing in separation. That's a lot of that clarity, potentially even if there's experiences from the past wherein again, it felt like someone was taking something too energetically personally, only articulating it from the experience of the self, but not putting into consideration what feels best energetically for the potential counterpart. We see even now that a lot of that energy is feeling the release and relief, if you will, of having navigated those experiences and recognizing and identifying that that is occurring. So we see even now that that could feel like a lot of heart healing that is occurring right now in separation, because that is not the energy that feels like they're moving out into separation due to a lack of emotionality, but almost that sense of care in relationality to what feels like it's energetically best, that almost again becomes that point of healing that sets the energetic standards as you proceed forward. Now for some of the energy right now, I do see in separation, having that point of productivity, having that ability of recognizing, coming towards a solution to an energetic problem. That could be that release and relief that we're seeing here. While for masculine and feminine energy right now that is coming into divine union, a lot of this energy that we're seeing that is coming into divine union right now, this is healing. This is beautiful and healing, because again, this is either the energy that went through some kind of point of conflict and they saw how easy it could be. And if there was anxiety and trepidation about what it would feel like when that occurred, like that's just that moment. It almost feels like the emotional overwhelm, particularly and especially if these were circumstances in the past, that these are energies that we're healing from, where it felt like conflict never kind of created something that felt like it was restorative. It only felt like it created spaces or places of creating damage in a connection. This is a lot of energy that's like feeling a lot of that peace coming to play. While for some of the energy right now, if these are modalities wherein there's a point of accountability that's occurring in someone that either like was either too emotionally I don't want to say too emotionally vulnerable, but subjected another to their emotions instead of articulating through the emotions, or if this was feminine that got too overly defensive and wasn't able to be compassionate in seeing the masculine becoming emotionally vulnerable. We see even now that a lot of this energy may be articulating and experiencing and expressing where those tendencies emerged from. Because if there's a modality here of, again, self-compassion, there's that recognition point of almost trying to articulate and to say to someone, listen, this is where that tendency came from. This is something that used to energetically protect me. And now that sense of overprotectiveness, it's creating a wall as opposed to doing something that feels like it's energetically helpful. This is why we heal from trauma. This is why we heal from trauma, because when we learn something in a space or place that feels like it's necessary, when we bring that thing into a space that it's not, guess what? That then becomes the source of the trauma. So we see even now that there's a lot of the energy right now coming into divine union that may be unpacking that energetic trauma from the past in the ability of, again, building a bridge, identifying what you're going to change going forward, and seeing that and being able to be productive about it. That's the energy, feeling the safety and security of articulating where some of that, like where some of those tendencies emerged from. While for masculine and feminine energy right now, deep within the divine union, this is just the energy that's just putting all of their time, effort, and energy into outpouring in terms of productivity. I just see a lot of this energy right now putting a lot of their focus in terms of like what feels like it's practical. And what I like about this, if these are modalities, like this is great, because if this is the energy that if they're experiencing a blockage, they don't take it personally, they get practical. Right? It's not taking it personally. It's like not taking it personally. It's getting practical. So we see even now like a lot of that energy is just moving forward to a certain extent, because that's almost the energy that like sees and identifies the difference between what feels like it is a personal limitation, something that may feel like, again, an egoic wound, versus one's own intentionality. So a lot of this work that we're seeing right now in the deep within the divine union that is being categorized as like work towards perseverance. That's perseverance. That's path work of perseverance. Continuing to get clarification between our 10 of Pentacles in combination with our Strength card in its reversal. May I please have one card to clarify? Clarification coming through right now with our Queen of Pentacles in its reversal. Masculine and feminine energy right now, deep within divine union. We articulated and we saw that a lot of this work that's happening right now for the masculine has to do in terms of allowing oneself the expansion point and feeling one's, like a lot of the work of the masculine right now, bearing in mind this is not based on gender, but what it feels most aligned to, has to do in relationality to experiencing and recognizing. This is a lot of masculine energy that's redefining what strength means, especially and particularly if this is masculine energy where in the past they felt that the ability to shut down one's emotionality was some kind of key point of strength. This is a masculine energy that may be recognizing and identifying that doesn't necessarily, like that's no longer, it doesn't feel that all that does, it's the fact that the masculine recognizes that that's not strength. Because when we shut down our emotional center, what we're effectively doing to a certain extent is we're showing our energetic fear of connecting towards another, like a counterpart connection, right? So for a lot of the masculine energy in that modality, going through that path work of unpacking that, recognizing and identifying where that may have occurred, like a lot of the work of the masculine, that's coming into that state or space of like healing. And some of that healing I'm seeing that's occurring right now is, I want to say, it's coming into that state or space of, I want to say, seeing or experiencing something. This could be experiences from the past where masculine felt something and said to themselves, I never want to feel that again. There could be a lot of the energy deep within the divine union that's recognizing or identifying those moments in the past that caused that energetic lockdown, if you will. There's a lot of unpacking of trauma that I'm seeing for energy deep within the divine union right now. While for feminine energy, if these are modalities or experiences wherein, again, you are doubting in yourself, you are doubting in your own abilities, this is a lot of the energy of the feminine kind of working through those experiences that, again, built that into you in feeling like you couldn't energetically do something, right? So for both of these energies right now, there's a lot of this healing that's occurring in relationality by recognizing and identifying the source of some of those self-limiting beliefs, the source of some of that instability. While for masculine and feminine energy right now that is coming into divine union, bearing in mind this is not based on gender, but what it feels most aligned to. What we're effectively identifying for a lot of that energy coming into divine union right now. This is potentially a lot of energetic unpacking that is occurring in relationality to experiences of the past. Because if these are modalities wherein, again, either you went through some kind of conflict point and you saw how easy it can be to come into energetic resolution. This is a lot of the energy that's recognizing and appreciating how far you've come on your own journey. This isn't the energy that's putting all of that. I have to say, there's a little bit of this energy that, like, not putting all the appreciation in the counterpart. You're recognizing that it's twofold. You're recognizing that it is the balancing point in terms of how you're navigating a situation, pushing your own envelope, but also working with a counterpart that's also inclined to do so. For masculine and feminine energy right now, I'm seeing either one of those two modalities, potentially articulating or experiencing those expansion points in terms of feeling and being able to unpack those experiences from the past wherein you didn't feel like you had that type of alignment. Or these are experiences wherein you're recognizing that you may feel like you overstepped. You may have felt like there was something that happened in a point of conflict that wasn't necessarily akin or wasn't necessarily ideal to the circumstance or situation that was occurring. So a lot of this energy right now, taking accountability for that, not just letting something go, but being able to amplify and to say, listen, this is that experience from the past that created that reactivity in me. This is the experience from the past wherein that was necessary. A lot of this energy is articulating through that. And I need to say this, it's not by means of an energetic excuse, right? Because an excuse says you have to excuse this. You always have to allow this. But to be able to articulate the reason why is to give someone the amplification of saying, this is what I need help repairing, right? There's the difference between what could be articulated as an excuse and a reason. An excuse is something that you say you must allow a permission point for this because of this reason. A reason is the articulation and saying the reason that this is evidenced in this way is because of a past experience. So that way you now have what is needed so that we can try to move forward in a new effective manner. So we see even now that for a lot of that energy, articulating forward in a way of describing the reasons, but recognizing that the reasons are not being articulated as an excuse, but more as something functional that is being brought forth to help energy navigate forward in a more effective way. This is a lot of that energy that is potentially having breakthrough points, because via V, the ability to inform upon what those triggers were is allowing an ability for both someone to say, I acknowledge I have this tendency, and another counterpart to say, I acknowledge that you are working through that, and this is what I can do to help facilitate that healing. While for masculine and feminine energy right now, that is in separation, a lot of this energy in separation right now, there's so much compassion. And this is the only thing that I'm seeing that may be creating a little bit of a problem zone for some of the energy in separation right now. Because that ability of expressing the compassion, right? I have to say this, the ability to express compassion, the ability to recognize and identify and say to a counterpart, this is what I feel is best. It needs to be mutual, right? Because I told you that some of the masculine energy, we're recognizing this last week, bearing in mind this is not based on gender, but what it feels most aligned to, becoming overly energetically protective to a certain extent. So what can sometimes occur in those modalities wherein masculine looks towards feminine and says, this is what I feel is best? That feeling of bestness needs to be mutual. It needs to be mutual, because if not, it can sometimes create the frustration point of the feminine being triggered, because when the feminine feels that sense of someone saying to them, I'm doing this because I know that this is best, this is often the feminine that feels that sense of the masculine that's becoming prescriptive in relationality to saying, I know what's best for you. So I can see even now that there may be a little bit of that boat rocking that's occurring right now in separation between the feminine, either navigating spaces or places of trying to say to the masculine, your compassion is appreciated, but let me kind of let me assert and discern to you what I feel is best energetically for me, for the self. While for masculine energy, it's actually the opposite, right? For masculine energy, seeing the feminine coming towards the masculine at a point of saying, I'm doing this because I feel like that's best for you. That's actually the masculine energy. This is a little bit of a thing. This is a masculine energy that feels like an act of energetic compassion. So this is what I mean right now with some of this, like I'm telling you right now, some of this hairiness that's potentially occurring right now in this retrograde cycle specifically has to do with trying to come through in terms of identifying like the solution to an energetic problem, and a little bit of this differentiation between how the compassion comes through between masculine and feminine. Because for feminine, that's in that modality of masculine experiencing it and the feminine saying, I don't want to create something that's going to create a difficulty point for you. I'm thinking about your needs. I'm trying to be mindful of them, right? From a point of balance. While for masculine, that ability of looking towards feminine and saying, I trust in your ability to recognize and identify and know what's energetically best. But this is what I'm willing to give towards you in order to facilitate that. I told you there's some energy right now in separation where that modality of compassion towards the counterpart may be creating a little bit more of a hurdle instead of an expansion point because of the over consideration in relationality to it. So please make sure you're communicating through this stuff. Don't come into the pathwork of assumption, because there is a little bit of this dysregulation I'm seeing right now in relationality to feminine, almost having to say to masculine in separation, I didn't mean it like that. Or you're misinformed in that, or you're not seeing something from the right way. So we see even now that for some of that feminine in separation, I told you this is the feminine in separation that's almost looking like this is what we saw. This is because this is coming down from the energy this was happening a few days ago for the energy coming into divine union. This is almost the feminine energy saying, I appreciate the masculine's desire to become protective, but it's not necessary, right? Like this is a little more of that work with the egoic self that's occurring. Continuing to get clarification between, and this is a lot of the masculine energy, again, in separation, saying, I'm not going to speak for you. I'm not going to assume for you. I'm going to leave in that space or place. This could be masculine healing and recognizing, being like, wow, when I make that assumption that I know what's best for feminine, I'm assuming that feminine doesn't know what's best for them, right? So we see even now that a lot of this work that's occurring right now, potentially, is in relationality to being able to unpack that to a certain degree. Continuing to get clarification between Strength card in its reversal in combination with our Page of Swords in its upright. One card to clarify, please. Clarification. Love to see this card right now. We've got here our Lovers. So this is really beautiful because we see even now that for energy and separation, and this is the message for the energy that was coming into divine union that's now coming down into the energy and separation, the redefining of what it feels like to be in relationship. The redefining of what it feels like to be in relationship. There is some energy right now in separation that is building into some path work, even while in separation, that is helping redefine what it feels like to be in a compassionate, equal partnership. There's something that is coming through right now in some way, shape, or form. And this could potentially be navigated with the energy of a counterpart that is being very practical, that is navigating that point of practicality. There's a lot of this energy here that's trying to work through what feels like an actual energetic obstacle. And what happens in the moment that you're trying to navigate through an energetic obstacle with something or someone, it gives you clarity on any experience that you may have had in the past where it felt like nothing that you could do was ever enough to try to fix something. Right? So we see even now it's requiring different things from feminine and masculine right now. And this is why I see even now this could be a little bit of the energetic hurdle. Because again, masculine, there's a lot of confidence. There's a lot of confidence that's occurring here. This is requiring a lot of confidence and vulnerability, particularly and especially because this is a lot of the masculine energy that may feel that in order to be able to facilitate through what feels like an energetic obstacle, they have to be able to come forth in terms of articulating what it is that they're actually energetically seeking in a connection. This is really, and I know that the feminine might not recognize this, this is really, really energetically difficult for the masculine to do because it requires the ability to be extremely emotionally vulnerable, to speak towards what it is that they aspire and desire with the feminine. So for a lot of the masculine energy right now, this is that modality of building into an ability to help recognize and be able to articulate what that is with a point of energetic confidence. But that's hard because that's the confidence that comes from vulnerability, right? That's the confidence to be vulnerable. While for feminine, this is that modality of, again, articulating, receiving that via the energy of the counterpart, the masculine counterpart, and articulating, again, this could be the feminine that is looking towards something like that and then is almost being kind of like in that modality, being receptive towards that point, but also trying to be very practical in the process, because this is the feminine energy that is looking towards the desired connection that the masculine may be bringing forth towards them, and is not removing themselves from the energetic reality of the circumstances to be able to kind of, again, not lead forth in terms of like what what the masculine desires with the feminine, but protecting their own energetic heart space to a certain extent, because this is the feminine doing that path work of resilience. A lot of the work that the feminine in separation is now doing, and like in separation, is not being in that modality of being like, oh, you want this? Here you go, here it is. Like, here's my heart. Like, this is a lot of the feminine energy coming into that modality of being very conscientious and cautious with the heart space, even in the modality of the masculine expressing what it is that they energetically desire with the feminine, right? So we see even now, like, this is why some of this work right now within this retrograde could feel a little bit difficult, because these lessons are complementary, but they're not the same. While for masculine and feminine energy right now that is coming into divine union, that ability of perception, could be a lot of energy that's almost articulating and saying the way you perceive something and the way I hold something are two very different things. I told you, we saw even last week, there could have been some modality of masculine feeling very emotional about something, feeling very much in their heart space about something, and feminine looking at the masculine and being like, what? Like, what's this about? You know what I mean? Like, almost like not holding something with that same level or degree of preciousness. So it's the same work that we're seeing that is occurring here. And it's requiring, again, the masculine to be able to be emotional and articulate to feminine and say, this is how I felt because of something, which is like very hard for the masculine to do. Having the confident courage to be emotionally vulnerable. Feminine not taking that personally, not taking the masculine, articulating that as an attack or as an accusation, but almost, again, receiving it in such a way of being able to say, I recognize and appreciate that that is how you energetically feel about it, but I need to articulate to you that your perception of that is not the same perception that I hold towards it. So we see even now that these are the energies that are learning on navigating different perspectives to something that allows for a point of building towards a sense of understanding in relationality to the emotional landscape of the counterpart. So as long as you're doing that in a space of keeping an open mind, that is that modality that could build a lot of that deepening of an energetic connection here, by articulating and recognizing the power that you're bringing towards the energetic connection via the perception, and being able to see something from the possibility of the counterpart. Masculine and feminine energy right now, deep within divine union. A lot of this energy deep within the divine union frequency right now is just, it's navigating those spaces and places of recognizing and identifying, trying to build forth towards others in such a way that they recognize that their own balance within the self. There's just a lot of this energy within the divine union that's been working very hard on that, like that energetic point of balance within the self, right? And so that energetic balance within the self, it helps to guide your own intentionality. It helps to guide your own purpose. And a lot of that is recognizing and facilitating that sense of like energetic security in the self to such an extent. And if these are modalities where, and again, a lot of that vulnerability is being unpacked, we see even now, this is a lot of the energy within the divine union that's trying to implement that same state or space of energetic compassion towards circumstances or situations, while also recognizing and understanding that vulnerability point, that ability of observing, like what feels like it can change, what feels like it's practical. This is a lot of the energy right now that is just feeling that stability point in navigating forward in such a way that's requiring a little bit of that, like that sense of like, I want to say, like not allowing oneself to feel emotionally vulnerable, like not letting one's own ego intervene in relationality to what it is that you're intending to bring forth. So a lot of this work right now, this is a lot of that energy, just taking any of that vulnerability and moving it into a path of progress. Because this is just a lot of that energy right now, kind of like alchemizing the vulnerability into productivity, like taking whatever feels vulnerable and moving it into something that feels empowering. Continuing to get clarification on these cards right now between our Page of Swords in combination with our Page of Pentacles. May I please have one card to clarify, please? We've got here our 10 of Swords in its upright. So, and we need to talk about this. This is what happened. This is what happens during the Mercury retrograde periods. I just want to remind you, the Mercury retrograde isn't just happening to you. It's not just happening to you. So having that sense of compassion, if you're feeling that frustration point, being able to navigate forward in that effectively. Like I told you, the reason this retrograde is a little bit harder than other retrogrades is there's a little bit more tendency for some of the stuff that's happening during this retrograde to make you feel like you want to take it energetically personally. There's a lot of this ego shedding. I'm going to tell you right now, a lot of this ego shedding that is occurring right now in this retrograde period. So it's really vital and important to recognize right now as you're navigating circumstances or situations, like not to let the egoic self be impacted like in those modalities, because when we have our egoic self, like when we have our egoic self that's pinged, it's so easy to get reactive, right? It's so easy. Like that is like, that's like that fine tunement to a certain extent that can often feel so triggering, right? So for a lot of the work that we're seeing that's potentially happening right now in this retrograde cycle is there could be some moments right now that feel like they're a little bit crushing to the ego, right? Like you know what I mean? Like a little bit of that. What happens when we're able to take that ego and say, it's fine, just throw that, I don't need that, throw it out the window. Like, you know what I mean? Like just throw it out the window. It's not important. You know what I mean? That's when we recognize, guess what? There's another ego behind the ego. You think you're going to lose your ego? You think your ego, where do you think your ego is going to go? You can't lose your ego. It's still there. So in those modalities and in those moments that we have that feeling of feeling like our ego gets a little bit crumpled or crushed, like I guarantee you it's going to be just fine. Your ego, like your ego's a big kid. It can take it. You know what I mean? Like you recognize and identify, because a lot of that modality is helping. This is a lot of that work in recognizing what feels like it's valuable and important versus what feels like it's unnecessary, what feels like it's extraneous, right? So if you're in that modality, like this can be like, it's going through that moment. It's going through those hurdles. It's feeling a little bit of that like frustration point, right? Like that, that burn, if you will. But then just allowing oneself to process through to a certain extent. It's often in those moments that we feel like our ego is pinged, that we recognize who we really are. Because that's that moment that we recognize and we find those things that are foundational within the self. And we see even now for masculine and feminine, that's coming through in different ways. For masculine, that is channeling a lot of that emotionality into what feels like it is productive, into what feels like it is energetically right. There's a lot of the energy right now of the masculine deep within divine union that is recognizing the difference. If these are modalities where in the past you felt like that pinged your ego, would have like moved you into that space of being reactive or moving off of your own path. There's a lot of this energy that is just like, I want to say, like reaffirming their own energetic commitment in relationality to articulating upon what it is that they hold valuable or what it is that they hold important, right? While for a lot of the feminine energy right now, this is the energy of the feminine that's not allowing those modalities of doubting the self, not allowing that negative self-talk, not allowing that moment of feeling energetically bad for oneself in a moment where it's like you want to kind of like, again, like nurture your ego. It's that moment that like you just kind of get to work. You just kind of move forward through it. You just roll through it, right? You just like kind of like you roll through the mud of it and you just continue moving forward. That allows for a little bit of that sense of energetic breakthrough. While for masculine and feminine energy right now that is coming into divine union, a lot of this work that we're potentially seeing at this time has to do with navigating conflict in a way that feels like it's completely productive. Like this is the energy that's redefining the sense of how they feel as conflict occurs. Because this isn't the energy, there's something about this where it's like, if these are experiences where in the past, the feeling of going into conflict was one where you were nursing the egoic wounds to such an extent that it felt like it created a space of separation. This is either the energy that's feeling the uplift and having gone through something that would have previously been devastated and instead coming out of it with a deep energetic lesson, with something like that feels practical, with something that feels positive, which again redefines what conflict feels like towards you, because it doesn't feel like something that is like crushing. It feels like something that is elevating. Or this is the energy that is navigating, feeling that egoic crush, articulating through it, maybe even having those conversations and saying, when you said that, it didn't feel like it was helpful. It just felt like it was hurtful. Like having that modality of almost trying to show someone and to say to someone, when you did this, I know that this might have been your intention, but this is how I felt. A lot of this energy parsing through that, going through the detritus of like what occurred in a point of conflict to try to find like what is going to help set the energetic standard going forward. A lot of that energy, even in that pathwork of restoration, feels like there's something healing, because again, this is an energy that says, just let it go. Don't worry about it. I don't want to talk about it. Because all we do in those modalities when we say, just let it go, is what you're really saying is just let that be the new energetic standard going forward. Just let that be the new energetic standard. Let's just identify that will be what it is. This is the energy that says absolutely not. This is energy that says when something happens that feels like a crash point, we go through that. We investigate it. We figure out what is valuable. We figure out what's important so that we can recognize and identify that it never occurs again. Continuing to get clarification on these cards right now, and we're seeing this even now for a lot of that energy that is in separation. There's a lot of this energy in separation. Even, I'm seeing here, even if there's energy right now that is coming into a closure point, even if there is energy here that is articulating and saying that there's something there that needs to reach a point of ending, this is energy that's immediately, like, look at this, immediately picking themselves up, dusting themselves off and moving forward, because this isn't the energy that's taking it personally. This is the energy that has articulated the why to one another. They're giving each other the explanation as to the why that is allowing the energetic breakthrough point that is helping into going into a path of productivity. And that productivity feels like it's helpful because this is the energy that's understanding that, and they're feeling the release and relief wherein they can feel that sense of closure and then be able to move forward effectively. Continuing to get, or this is energy right now that has come into a space of recognizing that something needs to change in an energetic connection, and they're landing upon what that plan is, and that is the point of productivity. Continuing to get clarification on these cards right now between our Nine of Cups in its reversal in combination with our Queen of Pentacles in its reversal. One card to clarify, please. Clarification coming through right now with Eight of Cups in its upright. And this is what we love to see right now, because for a lot of this energy that we're recognizing and identifying that is navigating these experiences, even in separation, this is energy that's just moving into possibilities. Possibilities. Now, it is having a different impact on masculine and feminine energy. Bearing in mind, this is not based on gender, but what it feels most aligned to. For a lot of the feminine energy right now, again, having that modality, having an experience wherein, again, even if these are points of separation where you're moving away from something, recognizing and identifying the sense or the space of seeing an energy of a masculine that really tried to navigate through those hurdles with you. Really tried to explore the possibilities of what could be possible. That immediately heals anything in the past wherein, again, it felt like no matter what you did was never enough. That no matter what you did, someone was in that point of saying, no, that's not going to work. That's not going to work. This is not going to work. This isn't good enough. This isn't good enough. This is the energy of the feminine that's immediately building into that point of clarity and seeing the intentionality and seeing the possibilities that can emerge with masculine energy that desires the same things that they want and is willing to move forward in that space of trying to figure out how to make that energetically possible. While for masculine energy right now, this is a lot of this energy that we're seeing right now in separation. Again, if these are modalities wherein, again, you brought forth a lot of different ideas, a lot of different circumstances towards feminine, and feminine basically articulated to you and said, I appreciate the energetic effort, but this is too unstable for me. This creates too much of an instability point, that there's something about any of those options that you're bringing up that feels like it wouldn't be in alignment towards me. It would create a sense of instability. The feminine energy that is able to articulate upon that, as opposed to coming into that point of instability without articulating it, being able to express what they are and are not available for. A lot of the masculine energy is feeling the energetic protection of a feminine that almost says to the masculine, I appreciate and I see your efforts. Recognize and identify that what you're bringing forth to me, it's not because of a lack of desire. It's because I know myself enough that I know my own limitations. So we see even now that that's a lot of that energy that's in separation, that's been building upon their own energetic standards, because this is the masculine seeing the feminine that's able to articulate for themselves, that allows for the abundance of possibility and relationality to how to go forward. So we see even now that there's a lot of that healing that's happening right now in separation. I do still see that there's some energy right now in separation of someone trying to navigate the possibilities to try to figure out something that feels like it's energetically workable. But I also see that even if these are points of closure, these are energies that are feeling the vitality of moving forward into new connections because of the gift of the counterpart that they did not necessarily be able to build forth with, but gave them a lot of clarity in relationality to how they proceed forward. While for masculine and feminine energy right now that is coming into divine union, a lot of this energy coming into divine union right now, this is the energy that's feeling the beautiful expansion point of what can be truly received when you navigate a conflict point and you look for tools instead of weapons. Like there's a lot of this energy right now that is feeling the release and relief of navigating situations right now, coming into divine union, of navigate, even looking here. Even if there's an articulation of past experiences, like having that modality, saying to one another, we're only going, the past is a toolbox. It's not an armory. The past is a toolbox. It's not an armory. A lot of this energy that is recognizing that and facilitating that path of progress. We see even now, there's a lot of that, like release and relief that's happening. And especially if this was feminine, where in the past, like feminine had that modality. Feminine felt like that sense that like anything that occurred towards like in the past was it was like that modality of never being able to move beyond something, right? Someone holding on to something in such a way that said, I could never forgive you after that. Like, you know what I mean? Like that kind of energy, like I could never, you know, like that grandstanding that someone hits in terms of saying like, you did this and that gave me all the reasons on the world to do whatever I did. This is a lot of the energy that's feeling the release and relief of experiencing and building forth with someone and saying, this is not someone that does that. This is not the energy that like looks towards looking for something to be able to navigate as a reason to do anything. This is the energy that's healing from experiences where it felt like you had those modalities where again, it wasn't that something was energetically perfect. It was like all it took was one thing that wasn't in alignment that suddenly allowed this like crash, this like race to the energetic bottom, if you will, in relationality to feeling that one person's misstep would allow for another person's misstep, would allow, you know what I mean? Like that's that modality that we experience that almost feels like that sense of reactivity, that instead a lot of the energy coming into divine union is feeling the point of abundance. Saying, what if we recognize that we're fallible? What if we recognize that we make energetic mistakes? And what if we take those mistakes and we hold them in a point of mutual compassion and acknowledgement? And what if we grow from them? What if we become better? What if we build forth in a way that allows for something to become like, that shows all of the possibilities of what we could do, as opposed to that, instead of allowing that to be an excuse or a reason to allow for anything to occur. So we see even now that there's a lot of that energetic expansion that's occurring right now that's allowing for either a lot of reconciliation, being able to articulate how one is going to do something better going forward, or feeling the release and relief and being able to articulate to someone and say, I appreciate, this is almost the energy going, I appreciate arguing with you. I value an argument with you. Because we do not argue and we come into a space of trying to hurt one another. We come into that space of conflict so that we can always find, like being able to, like, that's where like an argument can like yield treasure, right? It can yield possibility. It can yield an expansion point. Continuing to get clarification between our Queen of Pentacles in its reversal in combination with our Lover's card. One card to clarify. Clarification coming through right now with our Emperor in its reversal. For masculine and feminine right now, deep within the divine union frequency, a lot of this work that's happening right now. This is a lot of unpacking. And you see the impact of the difference in how it's happening for masculine and feminine right now? Because it's a lot of personal sojourning here. We've got here feminine energy working through their own feelings of anxiety as it relates to building stability for themselves. If these are experiences or expressions wherein the feminine had those modalities, wherein in the past they were always told, you can't do this, you can't do that. You can't do that. You can't build stability for yourself. You can't build confidence for yourself. This is a lot of the feminine energy that's going back to the source that was creating that sense of requiring or feeling like there was something that the feminine needed to seek outside of themselves in order to maintain and sustain stability, right? And that's hard because a lot of the feminine energy right now is working through that with the energetic counterpart of a healed masculine. Bearing in mind, this is not based on gender, but what it feels most aligned to. For a lot of the masculine energy right now going through that process, this is a lot of that modality and relationality to the feeling or the experience of looking towards feminine and building into that state or space. There's a lot of masculine that is unpacking that modality that may have said to them, in order to be strong, you can't emotionally feel. In order to be strong, you have to close off your emotions. In order to be strong, you have to close off your heart space. This is a lot of the masculine energy that's coming back into, like, again, shedding the ego, allowing themselves to find strength through the things that they care about. Letting that build that sense of integrity. Because when we feel that sense of strength while we preserve or work towards the things we care about, that's what we identify or articulate as integrity. So a lot of this energy of masculine and feminine, both healing via the energetic connection with the counterpart that's reaffirming towards the energetic counterpart, that recognition point between what they feel versus what is true. While for masculine and feminine energy right now, that is coming into divine union. A lot of this work that we're seeing right now in relationality to coming into divine union has to do with spaces and places wherein, again, something about this may be, again, recognizing and identifying if these are energies that are healing together. If there was something here that had to be navigated that became overly reactive, right? Masculine, having that over emotionality and recognizing, and almost feminine saying to masculine, you know, when you're overly emotional, the feminine shuts down because the feminine comes into that act of energetically protecting themselves, because it can bring that sense of anxiety in relationality to what occurs when masculine becomes overly emotional. Because all the feminine, again, and this is why it's important for masculine to learn to articulate through their emotions instead of reacting to them. Because the feminine is healing from the old ancestral wounds of when masculine becomes overly emotional. What happens to masculine that often becomes overly emotional? They lose control of the self. And when the masculine loses control of the self, the feminine energy feels like they are in danger, which is why the masculine energy must work to articulate upon their emotions instead of reacting to them, because then you create a safe space for feminine where it's safe for them to be able to express their emotionality and not become energetically defensive. So for a lot of the feminine energy coming into that modality of building forth in a way or in a space of being able to articulate what that defensiveness is, being able to articulate to the masculine in those modalities, holding the energetic standard in those moments of saying, hey, I need you to calm it down a bit. I need you to take it down a notch. I need you to recognize and work with me here. We see that feminine's also coming through that modality, because we're seeing here that when feminine becomes overly emotional, when feminine becomes unstable, when feminine allows the emotionality to subject masculine towards it instead of articulating through it, then masculine doesn't feel energetically safe. What happens when masculine doesn't feel energetically safe? They start to get overly emotional, because that's the fear that starts to come forward. So this is a little bit of that chicken and an egg thing, where we see that the energies that are working through this right now, they're acknowledging their own points where they need to do that work in order to facilitate a more harmonious connection going forward. That's not pretending that the problem doesn't exist. That's not saying, and that's the difference between the excuse and the reason. Not saying the excuse says, well, this is how I am, this is why I am, this happened to me when I was X, and now we just have to deal with it. This is the energy that says, this is why this is where it came from. I need you to help me fix it. This is where it came from. I'm going to walk you through it entirely. This is something that we can expect to happen, but I want to prepare you for it. I want to navigate through it. I want to articulate that I see it too, and I want to let you know that I am committed to fixing it. Healthy apologies, accountability, course of action, the difference between an excuse and a reason. Continuing to get clarification on these cards right now between our Lover's card in combination with our 10 of Swords in its upright. One card to clarify, please. Clarification coming through right now with our 7 of Wands. Masculine and feminine energy right now in separation. Why do we see so much of this work right now in separation is so vital and important? Because a lot of this work right now, a lot of this work that we're seeing that's happening in separation, this is why it may feel a little bit energetically triggering for some of the energy in separation, because if these are modalities right now where we're recognizing that there are some real obstacles to be overcome. There's some real tangible hurdles here. But the energy is feeling the value of the connection. They're feeling the integral characteristic of a connection that feels like it's navigating from a place of observation and compassion. This is the energy that almost looks towards one another and says, I want you, but I also want what's best for you. I want you, but I don't want to put my desire to hold on to you over what I know you energetically deserve. This is a lot of that energy that's recognizing and working through the path work of the self. And a lot of this could be a lot of the energy in separation, observing those experiences in the past where it felt like that sense or that space of holding on to something in such a way that it didn't feel like it was energetically mindful in relationality to what felt like it was harmonious, right? What felt like it was helpful. A lot of this feminine energy almost moving towards a lot of new energetic connections right now, coming through in that modality of saying like, I want you, but I don't need you. I want you to understand. I want what's best for you. But even in that modality of saying, like, if that means that that's that modality of being in separation, there's a lot of that energy of the feminine, like saying to masculine, I'm recognizing, and I want you to recognize and identify that too, because we see even now, this is the feminine saying, like, this is masculine and feminine in separation, looking towards partnership and saying to one another in separation, the desire that I have for you should not become an obstruction for you being in the partnership that is worthy of you. So we see even now that for both masculine and feminine, going through an experience of navigating that, either trying to come into a solution to an energetic problem, trying to identify what can change, trying to really find something that feels like it will not create masculine, feeling that instability point towards feminine, and feminine feeling it in kind. The only hurdle here that I'm seeing for some of that energy is, again, coming into that sense of like mutually working together to try to navigate those hurdles and not becoming overly prescriptive in what, and I think this is going to be a challenge space right now. Not becoming overly prescriptive in what you feel is best for another versus what someone feels is best for the self. That is the big challenge right now in separation. And it requires that sense of, again, navigating in such a way as being like compassionate and discerning, but within limitations. For the energy right now, for other energy, if this was a modality where you observed that that occurred, we're seeing here that there's a lot of potential healing that's happening in those spaces and places, because the acknowledgement, the compassion through which you've reached that point of closure, it feels like that expansion point. It feels like that understanding. It feels like that recognition that immediately allows for some viability in terms of being able to move forward in a way because of the easement of not taking something energetically personally. While for masculine and feminine energy right now, coming into divine union, this is a lot of this energy that's feeling the vitality and the viability of experiencing something and recognizing how beautiful it can be when you navigate through a conflict and the job isn't, and you don't look at the conflict and feeling like you're trying to win. This is like a lot of the energy that's recognizing that if you leave a conflict with a partner and you feel like you've won, congratulations, you lost. If you feel like you've left a conflict with a partner and you feel like you've won, congratulations, you lost. Because this is the energy that recognizes that a good conflict space, it is not about winning and losing, that when you're in a deep partnership, the partnership must win. What is best for the partnership must win. The partnership must be taken into consideration. So we see even now, again, more of that work of the energy redefining their own experience of partnership via conflict. While for masculine and feminine energy right now, that is deep within the divine union frequency, a lot of this is going through a little bit of that like ego journey. This is ego shed journey stuff. And this is a lot of that energy navigating those spaces and places, feeling the frustration around some of the energy around you that are going through their own energetic hurdles to a certain extent, not taking it personally. Just not taking it personally, letting it be those breakthrough moments, letting it be those moments of expansion and possibility. We see even now that for a lot of that energy, that's the energy that's moving forward with that commitment to, again, not taking things personally, but staying very intentional. What happens when you don't take stuff personally? You stay very intentional in relationality to what it is that you're trying to create, what it is you're trying to do, what it is you're trying to build, both with yourself and with your energetic counterpart. Continuing to get clarification on these cards right now between our Seven of Cups in combination with our Emperor in its reversal. One card to clarify, please. Clarification coming through right now with our Two of Wands in its upright. Communication through the retrograde period is always very intriguing. I'm going to say even now, these are a lot of the energetic, listen, it's the retrograde. We're always going to have these communication kerfuffles that occur during these retrograde periods. But again, a lot of this is recognizing and identifying what feels like it is productive, what feels like it is energetically practical. Masculine and feminine energy. Masculine is working on learning how to communicate. Masculine is working on how, if these are modalities where, and again, you may have felt more energetically triggered in the past, having those modalities of not allowing oneself to feel emotionally triggered. What happens in that moment? You become curious. You become explorative. You allow yourself to have an expansive moment, because this is the energy that doesn't let this be a moment of doubting one's own self. But it almost becomes that moment of flourishing, because that's that moment of, again, letting that ego get shed, that then allows for that consideration of other possibilities. Like, that's the energetic no that becomes a yes, or a maybe, or a possibility, right? Like, that is the expansion point we often experience with these retrograde periods. While for feminine energy, a lot of this work that we're seeing that's occurring right now for feminine has to do with experiences or circumstances or situations wherein in the past, that ability of, again, if you are holding the energetic standard as something outside of the self, recognizing and identifying that, doing that work in really coming into that point of not looking outside of yourself for the energetic approval. Like we see even now that for a lot of that energy, that ability of doing so, that ability of, again, recalibrating what you are holding as your own energetic standard, this is what is allowing for that abundance of possibility to occur, because this is the energy that doesn't allow that like momentary blockage point to articulate and identify them. This is the energy that flourishes out and forward beyond another person's energetic opinion or another person's energetic standard. Masculine and feminine energy right now that is coming into divine union. A lot of this work that we're effectively seeing that is occurring right now for the energy coming into divine union has to do specifically with spaces and places wherein the sense of communication, being able to articulate through an energetic conflict, feminine seeing masculine, that's able to acknowledge either, again, modalities wherein, again, they may have felt too energetically triggered, like seeing the masculine, coming into that moment of recognizing it, seeing it within themselves, allowing that to be an expansion point of possibility. A lot of this feminine energy right now is feeling that release or relief and being able to build forth with masculine in such a way that even in a point of conflict, it becomes a point of productivity. While for a lot of the masculine energy, doing that work, feeling the satisfaction, the recognition point of allowing the articulation of a vulnerability to allow for an expansion point instead of reacting towards the vulnerability. We're seeing even now a lot of that energy that's experiencing breakthrough points, specifically in modalities that would have created like blockages in the past. While for masculine and feminine energy right now, that is in separation. A lot of this work that we're seeing in separation right now has to do with what feels like it's energetically practical. This is either the energy right now that is ascertained and determined that there's something about an energetic connection that it's too emotionally overwhelming. It's too energetically difficult. Masculine may be trying to articulate through it, because that's that moment that I'm seeing some of the masculine right now may be feeling that experience in separation of, again, there's a lot of energy in separation right now that is navigating between trying to protect the heart space versus being able to have to make some like big changes. I'm just seeing that right now. And that's hard work for both masculine and feminine here, because this is almost the energy that's in like working on the same healing journey, that almost looks to the potential counterpart and says, I don't want you to do it on my account. And this is the energy that almost is articulating and saying, I recognize that. Like, this is almost the energy that says, like, I recognize that you're not asking me to do it on my account. I recognize that I'm doing it because I desire to do those things. So we see even now that a lot of that energy in separation, having to navigate through those, like having those conversations, is either exploring the possibilities of what could be, or it's coming into that point of being able to like release one another to such an extent that you're allowing for that expansion of what could be possible going forward. Because there's a lot of that energy that is identifying, like, this is a lot of the energy in separation that's being very mindful of one another's heart spaces in the process. Continuing to get clarification on these cards right now between our Emperor in its reversal in combination with our Seven of Swords in its upright. Can I have one card to clarify, please? Clarification coming through right now with our Five of Cups in its upright. This is some bittersweet energy that we're seeing right now in separation. You know, specifically and particularly because for a lot of this energy right now, it's bittersweet. I want to just say it feels like it's energetically bittersweet because either this is that modality that we are recognizing right now, wherein we are seeing that those experiences, those modalities, those like, there, I got to stress this here. This is why this could be a little bit more difficult for masculine. Because we're seeing that for some of the masculine energy, if there are tangible obstacles that feel like they're standing in the way of an energetic connection, there's a lot of that masculine energy that looks towards something with a point of energetic frustration. This is the masculine energy coming into a point of acceptance about what one can change versus what one must accept. So we see even now that there's a lot of that energy like coming to terms to a certain extent in relationality to what feels like it is within one's own power to accommodate for or adjust versus what are just the nature of the circumstances and situations. For feminine, this is more of that energetic equivalent that we're seeing in relationality to feminine, navigating forward in separation, feeling the easement point of healing from past experiences wherein they may have experienced the masculine that wasn't as committed in relationality to what it is that they aspired and desired. So we see even now that for a lot of the feminine energy navigating that territory, this is a lot of karmic healing in relationality to past experiences because a lot of the feminine energy is feeling like in separation, they're experiencing something that's building that sense of not being able to go back to the past because of the recognition of what they're receiving in the present that's changing their context of expectations in terms of what it is that they seek in partnership. While for masculine and feminine energy right now that is coming into divine union, a lot of this work that we're seeing that is occurring right now for the energy coming into divine union, this is the energy that is recognizing and identifying what those changes are. If these are modalities or circumstances or situations wherein in the past there felt like that point of conflict was always a disruption point, that ability of building into something here, that ability of building into those experiences, that ability of seeing something and seeing how much you can fix it. We either see one of two different modalities that are occurring here. This is either the energy that is in that expression point that is feeling the vitality of recognizing the sense of being able to work, to lay those boundaries down, to recognize and identify that feels like it builds the context in terms of what one can expect going forward. So this is the energy that's coming into that space of identifying what they can change within the self versus what they would receive from the counterpart that's allowing for that point of energetic adjustment. While for feminine energy right now, this is a lot of that same feeling in terms of experiencing and expressing those modalities in the past, wherein it felt like nothing, like those points of argumentation were not building a bridge, but they were more building walls. While for masculine and feminine, and that sense of remorse, like that is either the remorse for the experience of the past that created those spaces and places that you felt like that was occurring, or this is the energy in the modality of the present that's moving into that path of self-correction with the energetic counterpart. While for masculine and feminine energy right now, that is deep within the divine union frequency, a lot of this work that we're seeing is occurring right now is in the modality or experience of, again, recognizing and identifying what you feel is in your power to change versus what is in your power to accept. So we see even now that for a lot of like a lot of that work is very similar to the work we saw in separation, right? A lot of that is the masculine coming into that modality of energetic frustration in doubting one's own self, but again, not taking something energetically personally, but just allowing oneself to stay on the pathwork. While for feminine, that's that same feeling of, again, doubting one's own self, but not allowing other people's determinations of the self to guide that, but to letting the feminine, like, holding their own energetic standards within to a certain extent. This is the energy that supports one another on the way, because they are almost identifying and recognizing to one another and saying, I see how much you work. I see how hard you fight for something. I see what your intentionality is. Continuing to get clarification on these cards, our final card for today's spread, between our 2 of Wands and its upright in combination with our 5 of Cups and its upright. All right, we've got 3 cards falling to the floor. So these are our final cards for today. We've got here our 4 of Wands in its reversal in combination with our Ace of Cups in reversal in combination with our Ace of Wands. So this is so retrograde. I'm telling you right now, this is like such a retrograde message. Because what we're really identifying and what we're really seeing here to a certain extent is that modality of identifying what feels like it is adjustable, what feels like it is adaptable. And a lot of the energy right now deep within the divine union, feeling that frustration point, navigating some of those hurdles of the retrograde, feeling some of that energy coming up, feeling the expression of like the emotionality towards something, but then proceeding forward regardless. Like, just like, this is literally the energy within the divine union goes like, and then just continues forward, right? It's like, and then just continues forward, because that ability of doing so, like, that's where a lot of those energetic lessons are coming through to a certain extent. It's feeling that frustration point, but not letting it, like, letting oneself observe it, but not letting it change one's own course, right? So a lot of that work deep within the divine union, and a lot of that is being built upon or based upon the communication. And a lot of that energy, again, with the counterparts, is effectively articulating and, again, letting that focus build that path of determination. So this is almost the energy that in the modality of experiencing any of the snarls of the retrograde, it reinforces the energetic direction. Because this is the energy that abandons the energetic outcome as they proceed forward in this way. While for masculine and feminine energy right now, coming into divine union, a lot of this work that is coming into divine union right now is recognizing and identifying if these are experiences wherein, again, you are feeling a little bit of that first conflict. You're having those modalities of conflict. But again, having that moment where a conflict occurs, and rather than it creating an armory, rather than it creating a separation point, it creates an overwhelm. You put even more work in the place where the conflict is. A lot of that energy experiencing that, they're having a lot of breakthroughs in relationality to how they experience or how they receive conflict. Because if these are energies where in the past there was an anxiety or there was a fear in relationality to conflict because of what was being received in those points in the past, having that modality of suddenly having productive conflict, the expression that allows for an easement, the expression that allows for a course of action. This is a lot of the energy that's feeling the release and relief of the past experiences where it felt like nothing they could do could ever bring a conflict point into a space of healthy resolution. While for masculine and feminine energy right now, that is in separation, a lot of this work that we're seeing in separation right now has to do either with, again, moving forward from experiences, feeling the release and relief of experiencing something from the past, where you mutually acknowledge that the circumstances are such that they don't allow for the vitality of an energetic connection, right? But even in that modality of doing that, the compassion that these energies are bringing forth to one another, it is reshaping the standards that the energy is holding in relationality to any of that work going forward, right? This is a lot of energy that's like hitting the ground running, if you will, and ready to like experience those new energetic possibilities, holding the standards that they just learned from some of those experiences. Or this is energy that is working working in tandem to come into a space or place of easing those hurdles, easing those difficulties, finding those new possibilities. And in both ways, it is helping to heal the past and release karma in the process. Bottom of the deck for today's reading is, this card does not want to leave us alone right now. I know it's hard. The retrograde makes everything feel like a million times harder. This is just, I got to stress this. If it feels like, I want you to remember the difference between an externalized versus an internalized problem. If it feels like everything is harder to get up the hill right now, it's the retrograde. It's because it is. It's because it's a retrograde. The retrograde makes things more difficult. But what occurs in those modalities that something is more difficult? We can find efficiencies. We can find breakthroughs. Sometimes we have to reach those levels of frustration, right? Letting that point of frustration empower you into innovation, right? So if you're feeling any of that heavy energy right now, utilize it, channel it into something that feels like it's productive. Remember, the only difference between a breaking point and a breakthrough is how you choose to navigate it. So let that be your affirmation today. The difference between a breaking point and a breakthrough is simply how you move through it. That is our daily collective read for the day. I want to thank you guys so much for being here and experiencing it. Just a reminder, if you would like to book a private reading with me, you can book one on my website, graystrega.com. My private readings are done over video, and if you are a subscriber to my TikTok, you can take 10% off any of my services when you pay. Just mention your subscriber name at the point of payment. Please keep in mind, if you book a private reading with me, it is a 2-step process. You have to book the reading, you have to pay for the reading. Please make sure you do both if you'd like to have that reading. Most importantly, please remember that I will never, ever, 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 ever reach out to you for a private reading. I will never DM you. I will never PM you. I will never slide into your inbox and tell you that I have a very important message that only I can deliver. The only way you can book a reading with me is if you book one on my website. So I encourage you to do it there. Also, a couple of updates before we begin our personal readings today. First and foremost, our next tarot class will be held tomorrow at 6 p.m. PST, 9 p.m. Eastern. Please join me in our study of the Emperor card. If you would like to become part of that class program, head over to my Substack, graystrega.substack.com. Your paid subscription to my Substack will grant you access and entry into all of our monthly classes. It will also grant you access to any of the course materials and recordings for any of our previous classes. So if you missed anything as of late, I don't know if you've got plenty of time to catch up. You can catch up a little bit before our next class tomorrow. You'll also have access to a one-on-one chat with me and the other students to ask any questions that you may have in relation to anything that we're studying. And if you become a founding member to my Substack, not only will you receive a discount on the full year's worth of classes, but you will also receive a complimentary mentorship reading with me, wherein we will assess where you are in your own personal tarot journey, and I'll give you the best insights in terms of how to utilize those classes most effectively going forward. One of the things I tried to do in these classes was make them accessible to the absolute novice tarot reader as well as the seasoned reader. There's definitely something there for everyone. So thank you if you're already joining us there. And I look forward to potentially seeing you at our next class. And even if you don't become a paid subscriber to my Substack, I would encourage you to follow me there to be able to stay up to date on any new events, opportunities. I also post there the weekly newsletter, which gives you updates to my live schedule each week. I also post the winners to our tarot giveaways. Speaking of the winners to our tarot giveaway, I have listed the winner for our July giveaway. It is up on my Substack. We are now in the process of our August giveaway. So if you would like to get on the list to potentially win a free tarot reading with me, head over to the link tree in my bio. There is a 2-minute travel survey there. Filling out that travel survey will grant you access to an entry into the giveaway. But if you would like to increase your chances of winning, go ahead and forward that survey to a friend. Because when I pull the winner for that, I will not only be giving a free reading to the person who wins, but I will also be giving a reading to the individual who referred them. So thank you if you've already entered, and I wish you the best of luck of winning this month. Finally, I want to let you guys know I have a few new offerings on top of my standard life path readings. I now offer mentorship classes classes. These can be purchased on an individual level or as a monthly class package. That is 4 45-minute readings, one per month for the course of a month. Also, for my clients that are seeking more consistent weekly tarot support, I'm very happy to be offering weekly tarot insight packages. That is a package of 4 30-minute readings, one per week, so that you can stay more consistent on your own personal journey. I want to thank you guys so much for being here today with me and sharing in these messages. And we will do this again tomorrow.